Young cat got back, did a little bit. Now we hardy, puffy, tough, do-rag and Tim's. Kinda hard to get a job back out on the block. Charge that to the game. Young girl, she grew up in a rush. Had it bad, no doubt. She don't know who to trust. Every man she ever loved only wanna crush. Charge that to the game. But it's all gravy. Hey, baby. Shots get popped, the cops shut down the party. Jeans sag low, blow smoke out of the...
Good afternoon, and welcome to Expose Under the Sun, brought to you by the Detroit Native Sun newspaper. I am your guest host, Darwin Griffin. I'm filling in for Sharon Dumas, and I am very excited to get an opportunity to go and have this show with you live. And if you'd like to call in to speak to my guest, you can call in at these numbers, area code 313-868-0342, 313-868-0351, or 868-4336. And the website is www.tv33whpr.com. And again, you are watching TV33 WHPR, and it's in Detroit, Highland Park. I'm very excited to get an opportunity to speak with Napanji Thomas.
Yes.
I want to make sure I had that name right.
Yes.
And Napanji is giving us an opportunity to talk about something that's been a topic of conversation for the past week when it came down to what happened with the comedian Bill Cosby.
Yes.
And to also talk about some of the other incidents that have happened to others on Channel 4, Channel 7, NBC, CBS. So, I mean, there's been a variety of different persons that have been accused of sexual abuse or sexual harassment. So the topic that we're going to talk about today is talking about sexual abuse, sexual harassment. We're going to also talk about sexual trafficking as well as human trafficking. Again, the show is live, so if you'd like to call in and ask Napanji any questions pertaining to what we're going to be talking about, Napanji, right? I should just say Miss Thomas.
Okay, whichever is more
Napanji, that we'll ask Napanji about these topics. So if you'd like to call in and ask, we're going to get right down to it. So I'd like to ask, Napanji, I'd like to ask you the question, what are some of the behaviors of potential offenders?
Well, I think we first have to distinguish the difference between the various forms of sexual assault.
Okay.
So you have, I'm going to start with children. So you have sexual molestation, where the predator is usually a family member or someone that that child knows. And that happens normally before age 12. That's when we just classify that as sexual molestation versus sexual assault or rape. And then you have sexual assaults where there's a rape where you know your acquaintance. So that's considered date rape, acquaintance rape, because you know the perpetrator. Then there's rape where you don't know the individual that is the perpetrator. And then when we talk about trafficking, human sex trafficking, that's when the individual is coerced or forced into having sex.
Now, I know that there's what they call the date rape drug that sometimes are slipped into drinks at some of the clubs or some of the bars.
Yes.
Can you talk a little bit about what does that entail, and what are some of the things that women should try and watch for, making certain that they leave their drinks covered, or what should women do?
Okay. Well, you're talking about the date rape drug Rufinol, where it's a pill and it's put inside your drink. So it's best that you don't leave your drink sitting. So that's the first thing you want to do. Just be aware of your surrounding. If you're going to be drinking, make sure that you attend to your drink. Don't accept a drink from a stranger. And sometimes even the clubs are on these sex trafficking rings.
Hmm.
So even being aware of the club that you're going to, making sure that it's a safe club. So now we have the green light clubs.
Okay.
So they're Detroit is working. Some of the club owners are working with the Detroit Police Department to make their clubs safer. So those clubs have opted to participate in the green light
So the green lights
project.
that you see, like on some of the service stations, some of the party stores and places like that.
Yes, in restaurants such as McDonald's and things of that nature. So yeah.
Okay. Now, is there a particular type of a profile that a sexual predator or a sexual abuser would have?
That's a tough question, and I get asked that question a lot.
Hmm.
But generally, no, there's not a profile per se for a sex predator, because you have people that perpetrate as young as 6 years old.
6 years old.
Yes, and normally that's because they've been sexually molested, and now they're acting out those behaviors.
So if somebody had had that happen to them when they were a child, they then may start to mimic that same actions that somebody did to them and then start doing it to somebody else.
Yes, and that's one of the first signs, or not necessarily one of the first signs, but that's one of the signs that a parent can tell that their child has been sexually molested or fondled. So, um, yes.
What are some of the other signs that a parent should look for?
Well, if first you have to know your child, you have to know their behaviors normally. So if they're acting different, say for example, you normally have a child that's outgoing and now they're isolating, they're being in their room, or you had a child that had good grades,
Hmm.
now their grades are poor. So those are some of the things that you want to look out for. Um, Bedwetting. That's another thing for as for children that you want to look out for. Now, if you're talking about adults, what you want to look for is some of the same things: depression, isolation. Maybe you have a coworker that hasn't been to work in a couple of days, or you notice that they used to be an upbeat person and now their body um, gestures have changed. Maybe they're slunched down a little bit, or they keep their head down when they walk. So just some subtle differences.
Is there any change as far as like in their behavior? I mean, do they get angry? Do they get agitated with the slightest little thing that people say to them as well?
Well, it's on the spectrum. Each individual is going to react in a different manner. So you may have some that are angry.
Hmm.
You may have some, like I said, that just withdraw, and hold it to themselves. So the behavior is so vast. That's a little bit right. It's a little hard to distinguish if somebody has been sexually assaulted, but usually those are some of the signs.
Okay, and now, so there's a lot of times that you see where the predators could be people that they trust.
Yes.
Could be a minister, it could be a teacher,
Could be a family member.
could be a coach or somebody like that.
Yes.
What basically are some of the things that some of these individuals do to try and lure the child into doing something inappropriate with
Now, when we're talking about people that the child knows, usually there's a grooming process
them?
where let me give an example. Say, for example, you are a single mother
Okay.
and you have children, and you have a friend that volunteers to babysit for you, or
Okay.
to pick up your children from school or daycare,
And this could be
or
a friend,
it could be a
basically.
friend.
Okay.
It could be a friend. And they come into the family, they befriend them, start doing be activities with the children and even with the family. This is somebody that can be sitting at the dinner table with you on a Saturday afternoon, and they become integrated into the family. So now the family trusts this person.
Okay.
So then they start to groom the child, maybe by having them sit on their lap or watching X-rated movies.
So, at what ages usually are these children that are caught up in something like that?
Generally, they start off young and
When you're
it
saying young, kind of give a
toddler age.
okay,
You know, this can be a 2-year-old,
okay,
a 3-year-old, 4 and 5, even 6. As young as 8 years old is usually when this will normally start to happen, and it depends on the preference of the perpetrator. So if you have a perpetrator that is a pedophilia who likes younger children, usually 0 to age 12, and then you have non-pedophilias who it doesn't matter what the age is. It can even be an adult. They have no preference.
so now then when you're saying about the grooming, because my understanding is grooming could be some things in terms of like gifts that they could give them, uh, some attention. What other types of forms of grooming could there be?
There, play. It could be in a form of play with, say, wrestling or when I was a kid, it was leapfrog,
Okay,
things of that nature. So games that get them to touch, to where it becomes normal for them to be touching each other. So once that grooming process advances and it becomes more sexual, the child is a little more comfortable because they've already been groomed a little bit to think that that's okay.
okay. So now when we're talking about the touching part, but then also when you're talking about money, to give the child, let's say, money for doing work around the house or something like that. Just and other gifts that the child may want. Could be something in the form of like games, or like PlayStation games or something like that. So, what are some of the other ways? I know the attention is one thing, but when you're talking about like the different lures that people could have, offering somebody money to do some work, let's say to cut the grass or something like that.
Hmm.
And one of the things that I was reading about too was that you could also to get a lot of the children to go and disrobe. So, I was hearing about the way to get children to take their clothes off and to go and take a shower, and then sometimes the predators will take pictures of them actually when they're going to get into the shower or coming out the shower.
Right. Some of them will take pictures of, or even video
Okay.
the whole entire process because now, I mean, with all this new technology, there's even internet predators. So you have to watch out for that. But yes, they will sometimes take pictures of the whole entire process from the disrobing to getting into the shower, taking pictures of them while they're bathing, of the whole entire process.
So do they have like hidden cameras sometimes set up in the bathroom or
Well,
in rooms that they could where they're changing their clothes or putting their clothes back on or something?
Well, you're talking about someone that's really advanced.
Okay.
And this is somebody that the family really trusts because that will have to happen in that predator's home. And you do have predators that have cameras in their home, that have secret rooms
Hmm.
in their homes, or even sometimes just on their land.
Yeah, because sometimes I'm thinking like when you're talking about someone that, as you're saying about watching a child, they could go and drop the child off to somebody's house, and then they do some things, or just like in the case with teachers, they could lure a student to their house to maybe like the child maybe needs some extra money for anything,
Right.
and then they'll say, well, I got some work around the house that you could do. And then from what I've understood is that they could then be doing the work, let's say cutting grass, doing some yard work or something like that. And then when the child gets, dirty or, sweaty,
Right. Oh, good.
then
Come
they
and
can
let me take
assist.
these clothes off, and
Right.
yeah, that type of thing. Yes, that does happen too.
So when those things happen, then if the child feels that something that they may have been videotaped or they may have been, somebody may have taken a picture or they may have been touched inappropriate, where the person may have then gone and said, hey, let me help you put your clothes on or something like that, and then they actually touch them. What should that child do if they feel that something inappropriate occurred?
The first thing any child should do if they feel that they've been touched inappropriate is let their parent or guardian know. That's the first step. And then once you tell your parent, then your parent should, one, notify the police, two, take you to the hospital and get a full examination.
Hmm.
So those are the three steps that a child should take if they've been sexually molested or placed in a situation where they've had video taken of them or even pictures, because that's child pornography.
So, so that's how they would use their computers to go and put things on, as far as with the child pornography, and have a whole lot of. Because I see where a lot of people, when they do have cases like that, the police are confiscating their computers or tablets or phones.
Computers, tablet, laptops, any electronic device where you can video record, and those individuals that do that are well advanced.
Okay.
Those are individuals that are repeat offenders. They've been practicing this for years, so they've perfected their craft.
Now, okay, so you were saying that they could go back and tell their mom or their dad or
Some
somebody
adult.
else, right? Some other adults. What if they go and tell mom and dad then that happened, and mom and dad aren't ready to believe them, especially when you're talking about it could be a family member or a relative. How do they, what should that child do then if they're getting somebody that says in disbelief that they don't really believe what's going on?
Then, if you are faced with that situation, then you can go and tell a teacher. Teachers are mandated reporters by law. So if you tell a teacher, principal, or any school official, they're bound by law to report that. And
Okay.
then here in Michigan, the Department of Human Services will get involved and do an investigation.
Okay. Now, talk to me a little bit about the sex trafficking, human trafficking.
What do you want to know about that?
Is that something that occurs? Is that prevalent today, or is that something that in terms of say something that's happened in the past and is not as prevalent now, or is it on the rise? Is it on
Well,
the decline?
well, when we talk about human trafficking has been around since we've been a colony. If you think about how African American came over here in slave ships, that was human trafficking. So there's a long history of that within embedded in the United States. So here in Michigan, we're actually number three for human trafficking.
Number three.
Number three, and that was on based on a research poll done by Polaris when we had the Grand Prix here.
Hmm.
They did a survey and across the nation at just all the places that they were on the circuit, and it came that Michigan was number three for human sex trafficking.
Now, when you're saying about human sex trafficking, you're saying that it's not isolated to just males and females. It's both.
Correct. And there's no age boundary. People think that individuals are females age usually 13 to 25 for human trafficking. And that's just not the case. In fact, the number one target for human sex trafficking is homosexual adolescents because they are normally the ones who are isolated from their family. They're kind of shunned from society. There's a lot of homelessness with this population, so they're an easy target.
Because I know sometimes too, what do? I think I've heard that they'll catch them at the bus stations
hmm
or at
They
the
hang
train
out at the
stations.
Greyhound bus
Right.
stations because normally that's where adolescents go because that's what they can afford. They can afford a bus ticket.
Okay. And so now, when you're saying the term human or sex trafficking, does that sometimes lead into them going into prostitution or?
Well, prostitution is totally different than human trafficking. When somebody is involved with prostitution, normally that person is willing to put themselves out there for sexual favors. When we talk about human trafficking, the victim is forced or coerced into having sex with people that they don't know and they don't get paid.
So do they drug them up or give them some type of a?
There's a grooming process for that as well.
Okay.
So normally they will start off again befriending the person, getting comfortable with them, providing them some safety and security. And once that happens, then they introduce them into the lifestyle. Hey, you don't have much money. Let's consider doing this, or I'm going to a party. Would you like to come with me?
Okay. Again, our show is live, and if you'd like to call and ask a question to my guest, you can call in on 868-0342, 868-0351, or 868-4336, and all of those are area code 313. So now also, Ms. Thomas, so then if you're looking in terms of say, what are some of the, if a person then is prosecuted, let's say a teacher is prosecuted because they had inappropriate activity with one of their students, what are some of the consequences that can happen to that individual depending on what the nature of that inappropriate behavior was?
You know, that's a tough question. And I'm actually glad you asked that question because normally the consequences are minimal. Some individuals get probation, some individuals will get 3 to 5 years.
Give me an example of what could occur that somebody might get just probation for.
Say, for example, it's their first offense.
Okay.
They're what the judge would call a model student, or it could be someone from privilege that will get a lighter sentence
Okay.
or reduced sentence, or they may have them do community service in lieu of serving jail time.
So now, can they go back to teach?
No. Once that happens, they should not be allowed to go back to teach. And usually, teachers have to have credentials and license and all that, so they can have their teaching privileges revoked. Now, we know that some teachers, especially coaches, have gotten away with not serving any type of jail time or traveling from state to state. So that's how a lot of them avoid getting caught. They travel. They'll start in one place. Say, for example, you'll have a coach that's teaching at Mumford High School, and they're molesting children there. And they feel, because they know when things are getting a little hot, they'll transfer jobs. And they'll keep transferring and transferring, and they're creating just those are what we will call serial molesters, or and we're talking about with children, so those would definitely be your pedophiles.
Okay. Now, am I saying the term right? Is there like a sexual registry to where if somebody does go and do something and is convicted of some type of abuse, that they're put on some kind of registry or something?
There's a national sex registry that an individual that is convicted or found guilty of sexual assault, that they have to register with that even if they move out of state. So they still have to keep in contact and register nationally.
So when this individual is registered, what are some of the stipulations against that individual then? Like if they move on, let's say, just a regular neighborhood.
Well, there's limitations to where, and that's going to vary from state to state.
Okay.
As far as where they can stay, but normally they can't stay around a school,
Okay.
a playground, or any place where children frequent, and that's usually the least amount of space is 25 feet, and it's going to depend on the severity of that individual. So each case can be different as far as how far that perpetrator can live from a zone where children are.
Is there a number that if something happened to someone, and let's say they needed to make a phone call to, is there a national number or anything that they could call to let somebody know that they think that something inappropriate has happened to them?
Yes, there is a national number, and I will get that to you after our break.
Okay. So there is a number.
Yes,
that
there's a
people can
national
call.
1-800
Okay.
National Child Registry line, and then locally we also have phone numbers that you call, and there's centers as well here in Detroit.
Okay. So now, I was thinking in terms of like, so with what happened with Bill Cosby, or with Harvey Weinstein, or what happened with the doctor up at Michigan State University. Just kind of, could you share what are your feelings about that? I mean, now, I'm gonna ask you a question that you may not be prepared to answer, but I'm gonna ask you: do you think that what happened, the consequences that Bill Cosby got, do you think that was something that was appropriate for what he did, or what he was accused of doing? And I'm asking that because of the fact that I know you see that all the time, and you see those kinds of abuse that are committed upon innocent victims. So I know that a lot of people have had a whole lot of conversation about that, thinking that he got what he deserved, but then there's other sides of the spectrum that are saying that it was because of the fact that he was wanting to buy NBC. So it was a way to try and go and cast all kind of dispersions about him being a powerful black man trying to acquire a TV station. So just, and then we're talking about years later. I mean, we're talking about 20 years after the fact with some of the persons that accused him, of what he did.
Well, when we look at Bill Cosby and we're talking about the women coming forward, and some people ask, well, why did they wait so long? What people don't realize, when individuals who have been sexually assaulted, there's a level of shame, guilt, and even responsibility shared there. First of all, they can't believe that it happened to them.
Okay.
And what did I do?
So they feel that they could have done something different, or they feel that maybe they.
It was their fault that the rape occurred, because oftentimes society will tell us that women should dress and behave in a certain manner. If we wear a short skirt, then you're warranted you asked for it. Have you ever heard that?
Mm-hmm.
Where say, oh, she asked for it because she was wearing that provocative dress. That's not true.
Or going out to a nightclub or something, being out at a late hour or something like that.
Exactly. And so a lot of blame is placed on the victim. So if you're looked at in such a fashion, why would you tell? Because of the shame and guilt that's going to be placed on you as the survivor of sexual assault. So there's that level to why sometimes you don't tell, because of the shame and the blame that people or society will place on the victim.
So do also some, because I've heard that some wait until there's others that come forth to say something, and then they may in turn then go and say something after somebody else takes that first step.
Right. And
to
again,
accuse somebody.
And it goes back to that shame and guilt, and then not wanting to be the only one. And then once other people come out, they like, oh, it wasn't just me. Let me tell my story as well. So you'll have that to where you'll wait, or a victim or survivor may wait till someone else comes out, and then they'll tell their story. And then you'll have more people that'll come out as they feel comfortable with sharing that story. How many of us wants to tell something negative about themselves?
Right. I can imagine that there's nobody that wants to come out and open up themselves to the nation like that.
Exactly.
Because a lot of times when they have to tell something like that, they're not just telling a couple of family members. They're telling the court system, law enforcement, and in some cases, all the people that are in school with them, that work with them.
Right.
So, I mean, it goes beyond just the four walls that they may be in.
Exactly. And then look at how we're already responding. Well, why did they wait so long?
Right.
Well, so just imagine them and how they would feel. So yes, they're going to take a while to disclose that information because of how we respond to individuals who come forward that say, I've been sexually assaulted.
Well, it seems like it's such a topic with all of now there's a lot of men that are really worried about what they can say, what they can do, and it's a lot of men that are very uncomfortable, when speaking with women, because sometimes something that you may have said years ago is you find out today that was inappropriate even back then.
Mm-hmm.
So you shouldn't have said it then, and you definitely should not say it now.
Right. That's why we have to be more conscious of what we say and how we treat each other. I mean, let's go to a little bit about sexual harassment.
Okay.
And we're talking about inappropriate language and talk. We do that on an everyday basis for some of us, especially in the workplace. We're working with people, and you're just joking around with your coworkers, and you're talking about your weekend, and maybe talking about your relationship and what you did to your girlfriend over the weekend, and one of your female coworkers walk by and they are offended by that. That's a form of harassment. So there's certain topics that necessarily shouldn't be part of the workplace conversation.
Well, it's interesting because I've had some men that have come to me and said, well, so what constitutes sexual harassment from a female standpoint to a male?
And that's going to depend on how that individual perceives that conversation. It's all about the receiver's response and not necessarily the message that was intended.
So if a woman gets a compliment from a male, that could be subjected to
It could be, depending on how that particular female perceives that message, and even what type of relationship they may have. Now, there's a difference between saying, "Oh, that's a nice blouse you have on," versus, "I like how you look in that blouse," and your eyes are directed at her bosoms.
Okay. So now, what could be something that could be said to a male by a female that looks at a man's what? If they look at the male's rear end, or what if they look at his arms and say, your arms are really buff, or something like that?
Well, there's inappropriate touching. So even us as women, we can do things that can perceive as sexual harassment for, like you were saying, touching a man's arms. If he feels uncomfortable with that, then that can be perceived for him as sexual harassment, and he should report that. Or if
Do you get a lot of men that report things like that? Because that just seems interesting that a man would go and say that a woman sexually harassed him.
It's
And
rare.
said something inappropriate.
It's rare, but about 3% of men do report sexual harassment in the workplace.
From like a supervisor that could be, let's say, for promotional purposes to promote that male, the female, their boss, might kind of coerce them into doing something inappropriate for them to get a promotion or to get a raise in pay or something.
Exactly. Or it can even just be a female coworker or a male coworker. Anyone who is touching, talking, or having, or even sending emails
Okay.
that are inappropriate or has some sexual connotation to it can be perceived as sexual harassment.
Well, Ms. Thomas, it seems like this half an hour went by very
Oh,
fast.
yes, it
And,
did.
and it seems like, I definitely would like to ask you to come back again because there was a lot of topics that we really didn't get to talk about, as it pertains to this subject. But I definitely want to thank my guest, Ms. Thomas, for coming on the show today. I hope that someone was able to go and get some information, from this conversation that may help them or to be able to assist someone else. But again, you've been watching Expose Under the Sun, brought to you by the Detroit Native Sun newspaper. I am your guest host, Darwin Griffin, filling in for Sharon Dumas. And if you'd like to be a guest on the show, or you'd like to advertise in the Detroit Native Sun newspaper that can be picked up now at Kroger's, you can call Valerie Lockhart at area code 313-457-5944. And we look forward to having you join us again next week, same time, same station. Again, Ms. Thomas, thank you again for being my guest on the show today.
Thank you for having me.
I'm fabulous. Hi, Mommy. Hi, Daddy. I'm fabulous.
Young cat got back, did a little bit. Now we hardy puffy, tough, do-rag and Tim's kinda